absolutely. How have we managed to stay the pace here? Well, quite a few of you clearly have. So welcome, and welcome to those who've not been to any of the sessions so far. I'm Ian Wright from the Disruptive Innovators Network, and I'm delighted to be hosting this session today. We're going to be talking about one of the reports that the Disruptive Innovators Network produced last month. I've got a copy of it here, and as I say, we shall make this available to all of the delegates. I'll try and post a link before the end of the session here so you can download that. And the purpose of this session was we wanted to explore the future for housing IT services. It's something from a network's perspective we're really interested in, because I think there are some big debates and discussions to be taking place about actually housing IT as we see it is probably not the way that we want to sort of see it or work with in the future. It's quite traditionally seen as a support service, but we think actually that's probably underutilizing its role within the business, and actually part of what it needs to be doing is playing a much more forward-facing role within the business. And we've got three excellent speakers with us today, all of whom have contributed to the report. So I'm going to invite them up onto the stage. But before we do that, again, just a reminder, please switch your webcams on. It's great to see people, and it's even better if you can post some questions, and then we can bring you up onto the stage and you can see what it's all about being up here, because it can be quite lonely sort of sat here, but the view is fantastic. So please do that. So each of the speakers is going to just come up on stage, and I'm going to invite Kevin Ives, first of all, who's the CIO at Sovereign Housing. And for those of you who don't know Kevin, he's been in Port a year now. Hello there, Kevin. Morning.
Hi there. Hi all.
Yeah. So I'm going to leave you for a few minutes, sir, if you'd like to sort of introduce yourself and tell us a bit about you.
Excellent. So I still claim to sit in my first year, only just though. So I joined Sovereign as CIO last August. It was the first time Sovereign had appointed a CIO, so that's certainly one of the themes we pick up on, I think, in the report around the prominence of technology and information, and how that evolves in HA's organisational structures. But yeah, so I come from a kind of varied background, most recently in transport, working on Ives' digital transformation journey, so trains and buses across mainland Europe. Previous to that, we're in construction with Balfour Beatty, and then sort of water utilities beyond that. So, I mean, I see lots and lots of opportunity. I see lots and lots of parallels with those businesses. I see lots of areas that we can learn from each other on and in. Yeah, I guess 11 months in, I've got a portfolio in Sovereign that stretches across sort of traditional IT, but then also data, a digital function that we're building up steadily, and then a more broader business change and organizational change capability that sort of spanned out of a kind of technology PMO into a more organizational wide offering that spawn, as often it seems to do in housing, from previous mergers, which we've obviously been subject to, as many others have. So that's a kind of whistle-top tour of me. I can explore some more of those as we go through, and some of the challenges and some of the opportunities as we go through the session today.
Thanks very much, Kevin. You will see now, and we will bring Sharon Hayes from Great Places, who is the Director of Technology Services there. Sharon, would you like to come up?
Hi. Yes, so my actual life from a career perspective started back in engineering. That's how I actually started my career. But if maybe I talk about my last two careers around technology, firstly around consulting. So I spent a number of years in consulting, mainly around ERP systems. And as a result of that, I've had experience across a number of different industry sectors, none of which are housing, I'm afraid. So I am new to housing. Then the biggest chunk of my career, I spent working at Brother International Europe. And there I've had a variety of IT leadership roles. And that kind of finished off there, really, where I was leading IT into a more outsourced operating model. And from there, that led me to joining Great Places back in October 2018. So I joined Great Places as the Technology Services Director. And I think because I'm outside sector, I brought a commercial perspective to Great Places and the IT team that perhaps hadn't been there before. So through that lens, really, I've looked at some of the gaps in how IT's been operated and how IT's been treated within Great Places. And very much it seems to be a legacy of the last sort of 10 to 15 years. And I guess some of the things that are again drawn out in that article. And I appreciate that my exposure to the sector is limited to Great Places and the number of people I've spoke to in through networking. But if you look at my world, if you like, for the last 18 months, what I've kind of tried to focus on is building a really strong IT management team. And that includes that digital and data function there wasn't really any recognition of that previously, but also a strong infrastructure team to make sure that the foundations for the future were laid out. And then again, a strong focus of the report, trying to get IT a seat at the decision-making table. So we're not just reacting to decisions that have already been taken, we can actually contribute to those decisions. So for me, some of the key focuses that I've got within Great Places at the moment is looking at simplifying the sprawl of software we've got that's been implemented over the last sort of 10, 15 years. And from speaking to others, I think that's quite a common thing. And also making sure that our infrastructure that runs on our technology is fit for purpose. And that clearly was a very worthwhile focus and very important, because that's proven the case over the last 6 months or 3 months or so from a COVID situation. So yeah, that's kind of my focus at the moment. So still learning about the sector. It's still a little bit alien to me in some respects in terms of adapting to culture and change. But yeah, lots of opportunities, and I think lots we can learn from other sectors from outside housing. Whistle stop tour.
Right, Sharon. Okay, and our third panelist, quite a few will know Colin Sales, who's the one of the co-founders and chief executive of 3C Consulting. Hi there.
Hi, Ian. Hi, Ian.
Hi there, sir. Yeah. For those who don't know you, would you like to sort of tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, of course. So 3C Consultants are specialist social housing technology and data consultants. For the 20 years or so prior to joining 3C, I was the chief exec of IT services businesses. So throughout that period, we worked with the social housing sector, but we were providing the IT services behind that. And those are the kind of things that have changed quite dramatically in the last few years or so. When I started running one of those businesses, a business called Montal, we borrowed a fair bit of money to get it going. And as a result of that, Northern Rock very kindly, well, not as a result of it, but Northern Rock very kindly, just after we'd done that, went bust. And that changed everything for us as a business. And we had to transform back in 2008 in order to survive, quite literally. And we went from a very much reactive business model to a proactive one. And that involved us actually installing sensors on all the computers, or certainly the file servers we supported, which means that back in the 2008, 2010 kind of period, we were getting heavily involved in what they now call Internet of Things. in order to work very much more smartly as a business. And that, although that was a fairly torrid experience at the time, that just reinforces to me what the opportunity is within the social housing sector, because we haven't really embraced this yet. So I think the use of technology, COVID-19 has been a tremendous proof of concept for many of us. The use of data, I think we're maybe discussing that a little bit more. The fact that Kevin is a CIO, I think that's something that's changing in the sector quite dramatically. So these are exciting times, and that's a little bit about me.
Okay, thank you very much, Colin. Okay, if we can bring all of the panelists up there now, we'll got a few questions to sort of kickstart our discussion about the future services. I suppose the beauty about this panel is we've got many different lenses that we're sort of able to sort of look at this through, and I think that's a good thing, particularly both Kevin and Sharon's experiences coming into the sector from outside. But I just wondered from each of you, what do you see as the biggest challenge that sort of housing IT services face? I know there's many, but if you could pick sort of one or two to what you see as the key challenges there. Sharon, do you want to go first?
Okay. I think really making technology thought of as part of the wider business that we're supporting, so we're not just an afterthought. I think we now, because of all the digital, the emerging tech, we've now got to support that business model that's, it's changing. It's changing in terms of the expectations from our customers, from our staff. So I think the challenge, really, the big challenge for us is that from a business perspective, there's just that earlier appreciation of the role that we need to play in shifting that business model. And if we can get that right, if we can get that involvement, that, right up front, so we are not that afterthought, then that helps the business, really, because it means we can be more proactive in identifying those opportunities where we can leverage technology to support them. And it just means we're not on the back foot reacting to a decision that's already been made, or something that's already happened. So I think, to me, that's the biggest challenge. And then if you can get there, then it's just balancing that desire with being an integral part of the business and still managing your day-to-day BAU, secure, and the more kind of boring stuff, if you like, that they just expect us to be getting on with in the background. So it's, that to me is the biggest thing.
Okay, yeah, we'll definitely come back to explore that, Sharon. Colin, from you work across multiple sort of organisations. What do you picking up from the market as the key challenges?
Certainly from an IT perspective, I think it's that shift from the T to the I in IT. I think if we all ask ourselves what we thought of IT in the past and what our understanding was of it, it was computers and printers and things like that. We talked about IT staff. They were people who came and helped us. They kept things going. The cloud has come along, and everything's kind of, so many things have disappeared into the cloud, and now that thought of IT being all about the technology, the hardware, the software, that's changing, and it's now all about the information, and technology is just an enabler. And therefore, the role of the IT team is changing to provide information to the business. And that's not something that always sits comfortably, because it is quite dramatic. And something I always find strange is most people who get into IT do it because they find it exciting. They find it's a changing world that provides many challenges for them. And yet here we are in a situation where it is just that kind of changing excitement that we are presented with that is actually quite scary for many. And so I see that as a kind of challenge at the moment for a lot of organizations, that morphing of the departments into slightly different context.
And I suppose, as I say, housing IT teams are very much at the fore because of what COVID has done in terms of, they've we've been relying on them to be able to get their colleagues sort of working remotely very, very quickly. So I think this, whilst this is on the agenda, it's a good topic to discuss. So Kevin, you've been sort of nearly a year now. What do you see as the big challenges?
So I'll echo those previous the points that Sharon and Colin made. I think it's a challenge. It's a massive opportunity to sort of co-own the business model and co-own the corporate strategy and its development and influence it. The key bit for me is turning that into sort of practical reality and working out how, as technology professionals, we can interject at the right time to do that, and now is the right time, I think. Being able to COVID certainly, but also looking at the influence of digital on business models within sector and outside of sector, and working with our colleagues to think through how that has the potential to create shockwaves in our industry is a massive opportunity. Obviously, every business is in a slightly different stage in terms of the articulation of where they want to go and how they want to achieve it. And the challenge is making sure we are front and centre in that conversation, and that requires, and we'll go on, and the report talked about a different set of skills, a different mindset within our own functions, and a different way of drawing in capabilities from both the business and our supply chains and partners to help us create that. It's not the model that perhaps we've relied on in the last in the last few years. And the trick for me is to move our colleagues along so that they're not sort of defaulting to replacing their functional system where their functional system is coming to end of life, and being able to say, we've got to break out of that cycle if we're going to be making business-wide technology changes for the good of the underlying business model.
So one of the key recommendations, and Sharon, you mentioned this in your introduction, was that moving IT to that exec level, to that decision-making level. So rather than being seen as a support service, you'd been seen as a strategic advisor in terms of before big decisions are made. So I just wondered from the three of you, what do you think it's going to take to make that a reality, that, housing IT is not necessarily under a finance director or a customer services director. It's actually seen as a platform in its own right. I mean, Kevin, you're fortunate. You've been brought in as a sort of a CIO in that sort of position, but not every housing provider sees that. I just wonder, could we perhaps start with you, Kevin? I mean, what's been the thinking within Sovereign that actually we need the CIO within the exec team then, and what can others learn from that?
Yeah, I am lucky. I don't have to make that case. I am also fortunate that we've got a new CIO, I think a CEO, sorry, that recognises that through a number of years' experience within the housing sector, and realising where strategic investment in technology is critical, and so that's led to that decision. I think if I step back from some of the exec meetings I sit in and listen to the sort of nature of the conversation, there is a collective awareness of the importance of data. The Grenfell tragedy, I think, brought that really sharply into focus for them, and being able to provide practical solutions that move people from I consider the housing sector a pretty risk averse sector generally, and to be able to provide practical solutions within that risk framework to take us from a kind of nervous position into a much more comfortable position is really critical. So I guess if there's one thing for me, is to look at the corporate risk register, look at the role that technology has in working through those corporate risks, and kind of freeing the business up a little bit to do the things that it aspires to in its corporate plan, assuming it's got a corporate plan, whilst not being hamstrung by those risks of data, of old systems, of security, etc.
Okay. And Sharon, we've had conversations before sort of about this. I mean, how are you looking to navigate that within Great Places?
I think, first of all, it's acceptance of my previous answer. So the fact that IT do need to support the change in that business model. So that's obviously the first step. And I think what's also important is support from the CEO, from the chief exec, because I think the sponsorship from them and the behaviors that they demonstrate and the way they interact with us, that plays a big part in how the rest of the organization perceives IT. If you've got your chief exec bringing you into discussions, recognizing when those, when it matters to involve you in those conversations, then that will filter down. And then it's demonstrating the value, when you get there, when you get your foot in under the table, is demonstrate the value and deliver. So they can actually recognize that. Yeah. All sounds cool, doesn't it?
Absolutely, it is, and I think it's a big issue and a big discussion item. I mean, Colin, to say you work across many sort of different organisations. Are you seeing any sort of changes in trends that actually more housing organisations are recruiting at an exec level, or not?
It seems to be governance led as much as anything else. I think now, from a governance perspective, through audits, they're looking at the decisions being made at a very senior level, particularly the expensive ones. And let's face it, technology is often can be very costly for an organisation. And I think from a governance perspective, it states that there needs to be that expertise on the at executive and board level. So organisations, I totally agree with what both Sharon and Kevin have said. Organisations have to now demonstrate that they have that kind of expertise that's been drawn upon. I think we're beginning to see that people realise that doesn't, for the smaller organisations, it doesn't have to be a permanent resource. It can be something that's just drawn in and out when needed. If we look back at some of the transformational pieces within the sector and why they've failed, and it's often because they don't have that drive from the very, very top of the business. That leadership is so critical to that transformation process, particularly around the supporting of introduction of technology and culture change. So yeah, I think things are changing. And I think there will be, as we go through the process, there'll be greater evidence of the benefit that can be drawn by having that expertise at the top, and the costs, the huge and enormous costs that can be saved by getting it right first time.
I want to pick up the area, very important area for those who work in IT, around job roles and the new skills that are sort of going to be required. Because one thing that COVID has demonstrated is that, it's accelerated the extinction of some industries and some services, which, we're probably not going to make it anyhow. And I think, from a housing IT perspective, there are going to be roles when you're taking decisions about employing new technologies that basically you're not going to need. But conversely, you might still need those bodies, but you're going to need different skills. And I just wondered what's your views on the kind of roles that might disappear or change substantially, and what new ones might come in, and what skills, particularly Sharon and Kevin, what new skills are you looking to bring into your organisation and your teams? Sharon, do you want to have a go at that one?
Yeah, obviously, if we're starting to look at IoT, connected homes, you need that strong digital capability. But by default, we're going to be creating loads more data as well as more channels. So as you have an increased amount of data, it's more important to have those strong data management, data analysis skills, if you're going to make use of that. So I think obviously that data analysis is key. But not just the data analysts and the data scientists, but you also need those, I guess, the engineers that can actually build these systems. So if you're going to work with AI, build AI systems, run AI projects. So there's that kind of skill set in terms of those skills as we move more into cloud, as we move into IoT, on top of the data stuff. Do I think will the traditional skills go? Maybe not as much as we thought, but the way we source them might. And I think someone, either Kevin or Colin alluded to it before. I think we'll be more about morphing our ways of working. So yeah, we might still have a service desk, but there'll be more automation with it. But I think the other thing perhaps to consider is not just those technology skills that we're thinking about, but think about security. As emerging technologies become more apparent, the risks of cyber attack also increase. New technologies enable new attack capabilities. So again, we need to upskill staff on the new technology and the cybersecurity risks as well, because the risks, as much come from internal people making, having accidents, making mistakes that they don't realize. So we need to make the organization technology literate, as well. That's kind of going to be key. And then maybe finally really is, yes, all this technology stuff, let's get more technology literate. Let's make sure we know the data, but comms, communications, nothing will change if people engage with us in exactly the same way. So again, we need to sort of think about how we communicate, how we engage with people, because that's going to be key for taking everyone on this journey with us and making sure the focus is where we want it to be.
Colin, I suppose from your point of view, I mean, my question to you is, do you think these new skills are actually out there now? And can all organizations, not all organizations are going to be able to employ, the very, very best people, because IT, is a scarce resource. IT skills are a scarce resource. So, I mean, are there alternative models for sort of, accessing some of these skills? Do we need them all full time? Is there a virtual way you could use, some high level expertise for a few days a month, for example, and things like that?
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, I'm a little bit biased there because, of course, that's one of the beauties of being able to be an outsourced resource like we are. But I'd also go as far to say that we have a duty as employers to support our teams to develop and change and transform with our businesses. So when I look at those people I know within the IT side, they're usually hugely capable, but it's just a change that needs to occur, development, and they need to be supported through that process. So these skills are in huge demand. These new skills, the older skills, yeah, they're beginning to be there in a little bit too plentiful supply now, but these new skills and COVID-19 has only kind of triggered even greater need, has meant that if you can adapt, if you can become more focused on data, if you can become more of an interpreter for taking your business plan and turning it into an IT plan, if you can manage those outsourced suppliers on behalf of your organization and get the very best out of them for the most cost-effective amount of money, if you can be the gatekeeper and look after your organization. Sharon mentioned cyber attacks. These are things that can be hugely influential on our businesses now and their success. You can absolutely draw them from outside temporarily, more flexibly, more elastically, but it's also about mentoring those from within and getting them to adapt to these new requirements.
And Kevin, from your perspective, coming outside sort of in, did you see there was a gap in the skills that you're going to need to deliver the expectations of your team and department, and what are those areas?
Not so much. So I'll shamelessly try and insert the answer I meant to give to the last question and try and leave it back in, because one of the things that I think we could do, and perhaps don't always have the skills to do, is engage with our NEDs and our board members in giving them the comfort that the things that we're doing are the right things. So, not making no sort of generalizations around our execs. The NEDs often come from different industries. They come from different backgrounds. They look at businesses through different lenses, different scales. We need to be able to talk to those people in a way that gives confidence that we've got a view on our business and how we supply technology in a way that's robust and isn't, shrouded in how housing has done it for years. And that's, quite often they come from very niche backgrounds, and that needs a certain agility, a certain sort of mental agility to do that. So for me, where I look for is a curiosity. It's not technical skills I search for necessarily. I feel those technical skills are available, but I'm searching for a business curiosity, which frankly is often driven by a more diverse approach to attracting skills into my business, both in terms of background, both in terms of difference and respecting difference and different views, etc., etc. So that's what I place importance on, so that I feel confident that they can walk around the business with a certain amount of empathy and a certain amount of curiosity and a desire to get things done and fixed that frankly often doesn't exist within traditional IT skills. That doesn't say that can't be engendered by a mix of those things. So for me, curiosity, diversity, business logic, completely agree on the comms front and being able to better articulate the stuff that we do and why we do it. And then I guess the other one for me is partnering and good vendor relationships that I see often that we fall short on, being able to work well with our strategic partners to their betterment and our betterment is critical.
I just very quick question. It's come up in other sessions that actually what COVID has actually done is opened up the recruitment market, because now we're all sort of working from home or working remotely. The talent pool has widened. You don't need an IT director who lives 15 miles within sort of the head office. Is this something that you guys will be looking at to say, well, actually we can now go for? You've got a bigger talent pool in which to sort of swim. Is this something that any of you have thoughts have turned to?
Yeah, it's changed it so much. I mean, I kind of joked with someone that this is the end of the North-South divide, because Middlesbrough, obviously a wonderful place, Ian, and some of the talent there is second to none. And yet, as a business who I'm based down just south of London, and I might have thought twice about whether I recruited someone from the north of England, because I'd want to be close to them, if you like. But now that's gone out the window. That talent's out there. We're beginning to see the London housing market shed as people realise they don't need to be in London in order to get the jobs. And I believe estate agents in Devon are particularly busy at the moment. But yeah, it really is quite incredible, the opportunity it presents. We're probably going to see graduates staying in the areas where they've lived during their lives, rather than having to move around the country in order to find jobs. We took on a member of staff a couple of weeks ago, and they announced almost immediately that they were moving from Birmingham to Runcorn because their partner had got a job in Runcorn. And I'd have said 6 months ago that would have been a problem, and now it's not. So it has dramatically changed, and it's just up to us now to change our mindsets around that, and make sure, particularly the young people, they're used to kind of communicating the way that we're now having to communicate remotely, whereas we think we have to be face to face in order to do it far more. I say we, that's very generalized, but it's changing a lot here.
Okay, I'm going to get some colleagues up onto the stage there. We probably see we've got some good questions coming, and I'm going to take the top one from Mike Gaskell, because I think this is something we've all discussed before in terms of IT systems and collaborations, and we've been trying to do so many years. So if we could bring Mike up onto the stage.
Mike's had to leave for a board meeting. He's just added in the chat, but he's keen to get his question answered. So if you could ask it, Ian, thank you.
Okay. Yeah, that's fine. Yeah, so I mean, I don't know if you can see this, but I mean, it's about the collaborative development of software and IT systems. All organisations will be going out with their own individual specifications, and I just wondered. I think we've talked before in previous network meetings. There are organisations like Lottie in London, the local authority network there, who are looking to have one procurement for 7 local authorities. Housing system. So I just wondered what your views were around the potential for collaborating to develop software and systems.
Difficult to argue anything but, isn't it? I think I guess it's the question is how best to achieve it. I do see some good sort of coalescing around things like Microsoft Dynamics solutions that I think are pretty common across the sector, and I do see some sort of good support, and often it's as much going back to the previous point really around how we help each other succeed in those instances, and then those kind of loose alliances develop and flourish. I think the extent to which you force that through procurement routes, I'm not quite so convinced is the way forward. So I would like to think that by, again, employing the right people with the right curiosity, with the right attitudes to working with our development partners, that kind of happens naturally. And I've seen lots of examples where that does happen naturally. People reaching out to me reaching out to others, putting in contact, and then from there, user groups, etc., seem to spin off quite well. Could we do it better? Without a doubt. I come from a transport background where we had a kind of members association that operated in a more formal way, where people paid subscriptions, and it often generated industry-wide solutions. People can have their own comments around whether industry-wide solutions and transport and rail have actually taken us that far forward either. So there's no panacea out there other than getting people with the right intent. It seems to be able to knock down those walls.
I struggle with the concept in terms of, I've had this question for the last sort of 20 years around it, and I just wondered, I mean, you've answered partly there the question around, does this happen in other sectors? And I just wondered, Sharon, from your perspective, what's stopping us collaborating and designing?
I don't know really. I guess there is that kind of conflict from a supplier perspective. So, as housing organizations, we should be able to collaborate with each other, because we're not really in true competition with each other. And, as we're all doing the same business. So there's a lot of similarities. So something that suits one of us should in reality suit, most of us. It's difficult. I think from the supplier perspective, then obviously that collaboration with us through user groups, etc., is what develops and enhances the product. And some of them have to collaborate with others in terms of, making those systems more flexible, with like the likes of Dynamics and companies that have built their platforms on Dynamics. Then obviously that, by default needs a certain amount of collaboration between those organizations with each other to make that work. The difficulty is that it's difficult to kind of get around is putting yourself in the supplier's shoes. They are in competition with each other. So how, they all want to better each other and have their own USP. So them collaborating, you could see it more in terms of collaboration, in terms of that interoperability and how you can integrate with each other and still, work with each other. But it's difficult to see the collaboration at that side in terms of, because we're not going to have one system.
No, we're not like transport, I suppose. So Colin, there's been some big investment in new suppliers and new entrants in terms of the market. Then, do you think that is going to have an impact and drive change more around collaboration? What's your view?
Well, firstly, no, it's not going to change anything. What you've got to understand is how their business models work, and their business models work by taking revenues from as many customers as possible. And if these customers all decide to collaborate and share costs, that's not necessarily in their interest. Certainly the traditional models, anyway. So it's in their interest for you to have something that's bespoke, to have something that ties them into them. And once you understand these motivations, you begin to understand how everything clicks together. We are definitely seeing collaboration now around dynamics. We're beginning to see that increasingly, which is very promising. There's a number of groups that we're involved with which are looking to do that. One thing that's particularly interesting to me is we've been approached by an organisation in Ireland, and Ireland have already aligned the various social housing organisations in Ireland have already got a central body, a kind of house mark, or whatever you might want to call it, an NHF, which and they've aligned their processes. And the next step, which they're actually going out to market for now, is to have a single housing management solution for Ireland. Now, Ireland's the same size as Manchester in relative terms, so it's not so tricky. But if they're successful, it'll be very interesting to see what impact that might have on the UK market.
Okay, right. I'm going to try and get to be up on the stage. Can we bring Honey Premal up to stage again, please? I think Honey's after the badge for the most appearances on the main stage here. But I'm going to ask her to ask a second question there. Hi, Honey. Because of the theme of the session, which is around housing IT services, I don't want to sort of get too much into sort of the operational customer side. So you've got a question about your second point about opportunities.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for bringing me back again. What are the opportunities for housing IT sector? How do we get to the Amazon Uber world, and what's the journey could be?
Really good question there. Sharon.
Ooh. I guess we do have to recognise that it's based on the customer wants. So we need to look at how our customers are consuming technology, and where can we how can we get into that. And then the more we understand that in terms of how they expect to consume technology, what services they're expecting with, the Amazons, etc., is that engagement. I mean, in some cases, it won't be right for us. We might never be an Amazon in terms of the way we deliver our services, but there are probably elements of all of this that we can take advantage of. And it's that collaboration and networking, as we, through these type of events, through networking with people, understanding of where we can benefit. And I think a lot of these companies as well are starting to come to us with their ideas and suggestions of how they can support us. All the emerging technology this is coming out now in terms of the automation, are all things that other industries are starting to take advantage of, that maybe we're a little bit behind the times with. But we shouldn't beat ourselves up about it. Other industries have gone on a journey, they've got there. Now it's time for us. And I think it's keeping an open mind, it's engaging, it's talking to these people and exploring the opportunities with the partners that are coming along, who have used this technology and are developing this technology.
Sharon mentioned engagement, and that's key. And I'm probably going to try and answer both the top two questions, Honey. What Amazon and Uber are extremely good at is giving us something that works for us, that just is easy and simple to use. The other thing is that as individuals, generally, we crave recognition, and anywhere we go where we get service that seems to be tailored to us and seems to recognize us as individuals, that's something we aspire to. And therefore, if you're a customer of a housing association and that housing association demonstrates that they know you, that they're interested in you as an individual, suddenly it becomes much more attractive. Suddenly you've got them hooked in. They can understand what's going on, and that's key, really, I think, to the whole piece, recognition. So yeah, for me, if we're going to become the Amazons and the Ubers of this world, we've got to use the data we have. Again, I'll go back to data to understand who our customers are, tailor what we do to those customers, the way we communicate with them. We the ones that want us to communicate with them, we have to liberate ourselves to have the time to do that. The ones that don't, and there will be a lot of them out there who just want to deal with us remotely and just in the time that suits them, then they can get on and look after themselves. So yeah, it's all about recognition and engagement.
So Kevin, have you got an ambition for Sovereign to be the Amazon of the housing world?
That's a good question. Don't know. There's elements of Amazon that I'm deeply envious. There's many elements that I'm less so. So two things, I think, for me, in the how do we get there approach, assuming there means, you know, closer to the kind of disruptive natures of Amazon and Uber, and it's put simply, it's small stuff and big stuff. So I think the small stuff for me is around showing value day in, day out, and having a kind of ethos that allows us to engage and produce things that are demonstrably solving business issues on a day-to-day basis. We've developed a business analytics service in something that I'm really proud of, and we're able to turn around answers to curious things that come up in our business in a quick way, and then we're able to tell more people about them, and the more you tell people about them, the more they come with those questions, and that's great. That engenders a kind of open door feeling that is so desperately needed in order to move to the big stuff, and the big stuff for me is on business model influence. So, you know, if you're not there talking about how we disrupt, how we deliver our services, how we support our customers, if you can't take those ideas that frankly are there, you know, a lot of the vendors, a lot of the supply chain are there already with really good, interesting ideas, either within housing or not. If you're not able to convert those back to the first point and work with the business to work those up into practical ways that can disrupt how we do things, and not just think of it as a technology change, think of it as a cultural change, think of it as a different way of your CFO looking at OPEX and CAPEX, etc., etc. If you can't have those kind of conversations, you're only ever going to be at the kind of service delivery layer, and I don't think that will ever get us to an Amazon Uber.
Okay, Honey, thank you very much for your question. Okay, I would like to, colleagues, if we could maybe get in, there's two really good questions there. We've mentioned a few times about data, but you know, how do we make data sexy? Because there's been loads of attempts to either standardize data, you know, have one sort of system that makes it easier. Colin, you refer to it as the sort of, you know, as the new oil kind of thing. What's stopping us having data as a more prominent position here? Colin,
well, yeah, after
one
calling one of my presentations data is the new oil, the New York Times printed a headline that was "Data is the new sex," and this was about Cosmopolitan magazine, and they had a new editor. I can't remember her name immediately, but she came in, and they were losing readership left, right, and centre. And she came in and took a very much more digital approach to it, looking at the data, looking at what people were looking at, how long they were looking at it for, what was engrossing them, and just changed the whole editorial approach to reflect what their customers wanted. And as a result of that, changed the fortunes of Cosmopolitan magazine, which is now very much in the up again. So data really is sexy. It really is, because it can change our lives. It can make our lives easier, because if you've got the data and you can make the right decisions rather than the wrong decision based on data-led decisions, then believe me, take a lot of problems out of your working life. And certainly from my experience, my most stressful moments have usually been sitting around a boardroom table when I've got data in front of me that I'm not confident in and which my peers are questioning. And that is very stressful. So yeah, data's sexy, no doubt about it.
It already is sexy. I mean, Sharon, in your world, how a great place to sort of, exploring getting, better data quality and data integrity?
I mean, yeah, I don't know if I would say data is sexy, but I can guess where you're coming from. I don't think it comes in any other color, unfortunately. But I think the point that Colin's made actually is the fact that it's the appreciation of what you can do with data and the insights it can give you. So what we're trying to do is move away from the data crunching and number crunching type exercise, and more in terms of, you can automate all that. So the collection and the processing and the number crunching, automate all of that, so that the time that you're spending is actually using it for insight. So really gaining the insights, helping you make business decisions. And then, you are giving people, whether that's the business, whether it's your customers, what they want, as sort of Colin was saying. So you're actually meeting the needs, meeting the business needs. You're preempting what people want. People get excited about then what it's telling them. And then maybe, they think it's a little bit more sexy.
Yeah. Okay, Kevin, I think we are going to run out of time. So sort of final quick
just relevance for me. Going back to COVID for a second, I think most people went through the cycle of sort of stand-up meetings every morning, scratching your heads, looking at newspapers, looking at news reports. That lasts for so long until those stand-up meetings you keep saying the same thing. It's people's interpretation. Where we got to was really quickly getting to dashboards in those sessions to drive debate, to drive conversation. That was either around business performance or business recovery, and turning that into, and now we'll turn it beyond that into the new normal, and data will be at the forefront of that, and the decisions that we take off of that will be fact-based and not impression-based where we possibly can. And how sexy can you be than a dashboard driving each meeting that you attend? I couldn't imagine.
Let's finish on that CIO high there, Kevin. Thank you very much for that. I'm sorry we didn't get to answer sort of the other question that was at the top, because I think it was quite relevant to this session, but I think we probably covered it in terms of the need to get IT further up the agenda and get the discussions within the exec team. So thank you all for your contributions. Really enjoyed that debate. As I say, colleagues, you'll be able to download the report and read in more detail there what Kevin, Sharon and Colin have got to say. But I hope you've enjoyed that, and thank you very much.
Thanks.